Maya.
Hi!
What is globalization?
Globalization is a process that increases the integration of internationally dispersed activities.
Is the international community benefited?
Of course,
Oh really? How?
theory of comparative advantage.
Hi Ikas, what are you?
I am an international trader.
Are you for globalization?
Definitely,
Why?
because it spreads economic activity between countries.
Hi Priyanka,
Hi!
what is globalization?
A threat.
To everyone?
No, just a small and local businesses, like mine.
Why? Can't you adapt?
It's possible, but it's hard.
Hi Maria.
Hi!
In your point of view, what is globalization?
It's a gold mine.
Why do you say so?
Well, we're rich in natural resources, and we can get richer by earning from international trade.
Are there financial benefits in the service sector?
Absolutely. When we open our doors to globalization, many unemployed professionals are given the opportunity to work abroad, and what they earn is brought back to the country, and this greatly helps our economy.
Hey Nita, aren't you that famous nationalist?
Oh my, yes. But please, don't mind what I'm wearing right now, because it's my way to show my love for our country.
For you, what's globalization?
Globalization is like a tiny piece of mold in a piece of bread that could kill you if you eat it.
Why don't you support it?
Because first of all, our environment could get killed. Second, many Filipinos from local companies could lose their jobs. And third, we might be greatly influenced by the foreigners, and it's my duty to preserve our culture. Hi, Maya!
Hi Gwen,
Hi!
can I ask you some questions?
Didn't you already ask me one? No, just kidding. But yeah, I'd be happy to answer.
In your context, what is globalization?
It's simply described as the movement of goods, services, values, and people around the world.
As an advertiser, what do you mainly advertise on?
Tourism.
Regarding globalization, what is its overall impact on tourism?
It's good
Why do you say so?
because there are hardly any disadvantages, and it's a win-win situation. This day will be our
Hello everyone and welcome back to Think Fast.
Today, we have with us a group of professionals with varying stands on the rise of globalization.
They will take turns in staying behind the divider wherein they will be questioned by their fellow professionals.
The person being questioned will have to stand firm on what they believe in.
Shall we start? The first person to be questioned is...
We see that there's a very wide gap between the economic status of several countries, right? That's why the existence of labels, for example, such as first world and third world countries or developed and developing countries are globalized in a sense or spread throughout the entire globe because of its high familiarity. As globalists, we think that the emergence of a single global market mends and narrows down the gap between these nations. Because when we look at the service sector, for example, we see that a first world country like China spreads its technology not only to its fellow first worlds but to developing nations like the Philippines as well. But let's look at the Philippines, right? We see the popularity of Dumaguete City or Palawan, for example, as tourist destinations. We think that the presence of international agencies that promote these places are opportunities for foreign tourists to come to our country and therefore act as boosters for our economy. Then we have Jollibee, the symbol of globalization for our country. This Filipino-owned food chain didn't just bring financial prosperity but accessibility to affordable food services with a taste of Filipino cuisine, right? We think that the harms that opposition might bring, like globalization being a form of Western imperialism, as the World Bank, for example, or the IMF legislates biased or self-gain policies, we think that globalization will have no way of marginalizing the poor some more because the trade in the international market means that all countries have the opportunity of gaining profit. With this, even if monopoly, for example, can be practiced, the country as a whole will still be benefited. And for this, we think that people need to be more macro-minded with globalization.
We have to disagree because we believe that globalization only widens that gap. You say that the country as a whole will be benefited, but what about the people individually? Globalization encourages the countrymen to adapt to the trends of the changing world, where mostly Western ideas and culture prevail. We believe globalization is a threat, especially to small and local businesses like mine. For people who own small carinderias that sell local Filipino food, there is that fear that they may be at the brink of closing because people prefer to eat at international food chains such as McDonald's and KFC, where Western food is served. Living in a country that is heavily influenced by globalization, the demand for imported goods outweighs that of our local goods. These internationally recognized brands take away the opportunities for our local brands to prosper. Let's face it, how does the MyPhone compare to the iPhone? Furthermore, with the large amount of profit that they acquire, these brands could afford to be advertised in order to make themselves more well-known. They could even extend their influence to more communities by establishing more branches, while we, the small businessmen, even struggle to break even. Yes, Jollibee is a well-known Filipino-owned fast food chain. But what other Filipino business can you name which stands at the same level? When you say that the whole country is benefited, wouldn't you rather say that only the elite will prosper further? In status quo, we got to see how it's only these big international companies that get to further develop their business, when in fact you stated that globalization would help us as a whole.
Globalization is bad for our country because international businesses outshadow the local businesses we have in the Philippines, making the poor poorer. This is what opposition constantly claims, but we disagree with this because instead we see globalization as an opportunity for our local businesses to grow. The previous speaker talked about how Jollibee is the only prominent Filipino brand we hear of and how the quality of our products don't compare to those of other countries. But businesses always start small, and opening our doors to globalization gives small businesses the opportunity to access advanced technology and other factors from other countries that we can benefit from. We believe that we benefit from globalization for three more reasons. Firstly, we all know that the Philippines is abundant in natural resources, but ironically, our economy is stagnant with the lack of jobs and poverty being a major issue too. We see Saudi Arabia as an example of a country with abundant resources of oil, and they use that to their advantage, which is why they're known to be a very rich country. This shows how, in globalization, we too can earn much from our agricultural sector, and which then improves the financial status of many lower-class citizens. Secondly, the rise of BPO industries have significantly increased the country's GDP. An example of this is how Australian call centers invest in the Philippines and many are employed, increasing the people in the middle class. Thirdly, globalization helps our stagnant economy that can't generate enough jobs for the many unemployed Filipinos. It opens doors to jobs overseas and their income greatly helps our economy's GNP. Aside from this, these also help people from different social classes improve their status by giving them jobs and gaining a stable income. In summary, we believe that globalization is an opportunity to improve the financial status of the country in both macro and micro aspects, which is why the Philippines must fully embrace the concept of globalization.
They mentioned about OFWs and call center agents working, right? But let me remind you that for OFWs, they are facing a lot of big problems because of the fact that there are a lot of OFWs working in high-risk countries. For call center agents, there's also a huge problem because in call centers, they usually work at night, which is a big problem because these people are now having problems with their health because they don't get a lot of sleep. Now, globalization makes us lose our identity. The fact that we're also constantly using other people's brands or the fact that we're always following other people's ways makes us, our Filipino identity be gone. Like, it's deteriorating because we are always following other people's ways. Not only is that the only thing globalization brings us, but in the service sector, but there is more. As a developing country, sure, you may say that we could use our agricultural products to earn money, but solely relying to that may lead to our environment dying. And not only that, since we are leading to an industrialized economy, there will be many buildings built which would further damage our environment since we'd have to cut more trees to make buildings and have space. Now, government are also fighting about tourism, but let me tell you that because of these tourism, that a lot of people are coming into our country, a lot of tourists are coming to our country, it's making a huge problem because these wonderful places that we used to call amazing are now becoming deteriorated because most of the tourists that comes here are not really taking care of it, which deteriorates it like Boracay. Thank you.
Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Nationalist thinks that isolating your own country's identity is the best way for economic growth. But we question why North Korea has failed because of their isolation from globalization. We think that advertising your country to foreign nations is what progresses a country. I am all for globalization, and as I've said a while ago, it has little to no disadvantages at all. And I personally think that globalization is the next step for us in order to achieve a better economy worldwide. Moreover, it has certainly left a positive impact on what I and many other people advertise on, which is tourism. First off is the cultural homogenizer. It offers the opportunity to teach people how to respect other cultures. This allows certain beliefs or values, such as embracing diversity or equality, to be spread around the world. We've attracted foreign students to enroll in Philippine education because of our English-based medium of instructions. Because of this, English teachers and tutors have increased income from the influx of foreign students. Next is global branding. Several companies have managed to overcome the complexities of transnational marketing to establish successful global brands. McDonald's, for instance, has developed a simple yet clear marketing messages that translate to different cultures and has revised its product lines to feature healthier items. Lastly, global consumers. Effective advertising creates new demands in new markets by influencing changes in buying habits and lifestyles. Teens and young adults from overseas have turned American brands like Guess and Levi's into international brands. With globalization, advertising has never been easier.
Miss Advertiser tells us about the fact that there are students studying here and which gives teachers a raise. But let me remind you that these students could be here to learn for the betterment of their country. Like they could learn how to make rice here and spread that learning to their own country so that they could start making their rice there and stop having imports of rice from our country. And that leads to a bad thing for us here in the economy. She also talked about how global branding is amazing, but again, let us remind you that this is not a good thing for our country. It's not a good thing because the local brands we have in our country have been overshadowed by these big brands that comes from foreign places. She also talked about global consumers. Now, almost all of us here in the Philippines are global consumers because a lot of us are in the country are buying products that does not come from our country, and which is a bad thing. This then makes us see how these local companies that we have are overshadowed by these big foreign companies that has come here in the Philippines because of globalization. And because of that, there are a lot of local companies that we have that are now closed down because of these big international companies that's overshadowing them, causing a lot of Filipinos to lose their jobs because they're working in these local companies that we have.
As an international trader, I stand for the fact that globalization spreads economic activity. It is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by the cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. And countries have built economic partnerships to facilitate these economic movements over many centuries. Nations with strong international trade, such as the US and Japan, have become more prosperous. The global trade can become one of the major contributors to the reduction of poverty. Benefits from the international trade includes greater variety of goods available for consumption, efficient allocation and better utilization of resources, efficiency in production, more employment, cheaper costs for products, reduction of trade fluctuations or changes, utilization of surplus produce by selling in return of foreign exchange, and fostering of peace and goodwill, as it leads to mutual understandings and close cultural relationships, thus avoiding war among countries.